My name is Chidi Njoku. I'm a licensed clinical social worker over here at Kaiser Permanente in the South Bay area. I appreciate so much having the opportunity to connect with you all today regarding this concept of empathy and how it might be able to support you in your efforts related to conflict resolution. Before I jump into that, I just want to give you a little background on myself. Let's see, I've been working in the field in the field of behavioral health for almost 25 years now. Initial years of my career were spent working in the nonprofit realm with various patient populations, beginning with homeless families down on Skid Row. I've worked with at-risk children in the foster care system, victims of violent crime, as well as various school-based programs before transitioning into the Kaiser system. When I joined Kaiser, I had the opportunity to initially work with children and their families related to substance abuse challenges. And that presented a host of opportunities to help families and as well as individuals navigate this issue of resolving conflict. I'm sure you all can imagine, families trying to navigate the very difficult waters of addiction, and especially addiction with adolescents provides a host of challenges in terms of conflicts that will come up from time to time. And so had tons of opportunity there working with those families and trying to sort those challenges out. Beyond that, I also spent several years working in both a pediatric as well as an adult ICU units, helping families in these very difficult moments in life where they're having to make decisions related to the care of loved ones that are in understandably difficult circumstances from a health standpoint. And again, situations that provided more than its fair share of difficult decisions that needed to be made and conflicts around those difficult decisions. And so after transitioning from there, I've now jumped into the administrative portion of my career where I am, as stated earlier, now working in the South Bay Medical Center for Kaiser, overseeing both the psychiatry and addiction medicine departments, and has provided me with a different lens as it pertains to this work and helping families and supporting them through their journeys. And just to kind of help keep myself grounded, I've been working on the side and doing private practice. And much of my work revolves around working with couples as well as individuals and addressing their various mental health needs. And a great host of those really revolve around navigating relational challenges and how hard it can be from time to time in terms of just figuring out how to manage one's own emotions as we interact with people around us. And so feel really privileged to be able to talk with you all today around this issue. And just to kind of help set the tone on that, I just want to highlight a few points around this issue of conflict resolution. Now, many of us, I mean, all of our lives have been impacted by the pandemic and how difficult the many difficulties that this pandemic presented to us. And one of the biggest challenges was related to our relationships. Some of us were completely stripped of many of those relationships and the opportunity to interact and forced to kind of hunker down in a very isolated manner. Others of us were thrown into situations where we were forced to hunker down with loved ones or significant others and forced to take a look at those relationships and the difficulties that exist within those relationships, tons of opportunities for conflict to present itself. And with that being said, what we've observed in the behavioral health realm is that there's been a significant increase in divorce rates and just overall relationships breaking down because it really kind of turned into kind of a hotbed of opportunity for conflicts to show themselves and for people's inability to navigate those conflicts effectively without sacrificing the relationship. And so hopefully, as we're talking today, we can shed a little bit of light on some helpful tips and tools related to this idea of conflict resolution and how we can use empathy to get through that. Just going to highlight a couple other statistics related to this point. A lot of, and I'm going to, these next few statistics will specifically point to marriage, and I'll talk about why I chose to focus there in a moment. But I was recently looking at an article that talked about how about 41% of all marriages end in divorce right now, 60% of second marriages end in divorce, while 73% of third marriages end in divorce. And the reality is that this isn't a conversation about marriage per se, so much as it's an acknowledgement that even when the legal aspects that bind two people together and the stakes that are so much higher as it pertains to marriage are in the equation, navigating conflicts is just an extremely difficult concept to figure out. And so much of these relationships that break down, whether it's a marriage or a friendship or a connection with family members, the truth of the matter is that when people's emotions are at stake and feelings have been or appear to be stepped on, it can be hard. It can be hard to hang on to that relationship in such a way that allows you the opportunity to get on the other side of that conflict. We all as human beings are born into situations that either afford or deny us the opportunity for connection. We come into this world both desiring and needing attachment to other people. Sometimes these connections are solid and they provide us with the foundation needed to develop us into the people that we are today, both for good and bad. And for those of us that have the opportunity to grow up in the context of a family of some sort, we're provided that opportunity to walk in what I like to describe as a training grounds, if you will, on how to navigate relationships. And as you walk through that training ground, and I know most people wouldn't necessarily consider family, connecting the idea of the concept of family with a training ground can be a foreign idea, but just humor me for a moment as I highlight this idea of the fact that within the context of a family, this is where you learn a lot of the skills to move through the world today. Within the context of a family, we observe and we learn how to walk, how to talk, how to laugh, how to play. We also learn how to connect or disconnect from the people around us. As we grow older, we learn how to negotiate for the things that we want. We learn how to advocate both for ourselves and for other people. We also learn how to experience rejection. We learn how to experience acceptance. And in an ideal situation, we're equipped with the tools to move through the more difficult situations. And we also are equipped with the tools to effectively embrace the parts of those relationships that feel really good. Now, as we move through our family units, some of the learnings that we experience are very healthy and serve us well. And some of those learnings are, can be more on the unhealthy side and not as helpful in helping us to move towards those growth points that we all seek. Now, the good, the bad, and everything in between on that spectrum of healthy versus unhealthy is what we bring into all of our relationships today. This broad spectrum of relational patterns are carried into each interaction we have with the people around us. And some of us develop a skill set and ability to contain the healthier parts of that, to display the healthier parts of that and to contain the unhealthier parts. And some of us not so much. And so, as we are moving through life, we're constantly bumping against folks that will either have some of those healthier aspects of their functioning, their relational abilities on display, and for other of us, not so much. And I like to look at when we're talking about relationships, I like to describe it very much like it's kind of like a dance where when you're dancing with someone, it has the potential to be a really beautiful and fun and engaging experience. It can be amazing. And as amazing as a great dance can be, and with the most skilled of dancers, when you're working with a partner, there's going to be opportunity. There'll be there's every once in a while there'll be a situation where somebody's toes get stepped on. And in that moment, feelings come up, hence the opportunity for conflict to arise. And when conflict arises, the natural reaction is to go into defense mode for many of us. And defense mode can take a few different looks, if you will. For some, it's a matter of just because it's what feels safe, they retreat into their shell. They shut down, they go into that place that feels safest, which is inside. And that becomes their place to go and hide how they feel, what they're thinking. And it's also a place to try to hide from that person that made the offense. And this oftentimes will lead to, a pretty significant, depending on how significant the hurt is, can be an equally significant disconnect from that other person. For others of us, when these moments arise, when they come up, it's a lot easier to go on the attack. I've been hurt, so now I need to hurt that person who hurt me. It's a retaliation. And we're hurting because we're trying to protect against getting hurt any further. Makes logical sense from a standpoint of survival of the fittest. However, within the context of the relationship, we diminish our opportunity at connection when we're on the offensive, when we're trying to attack to protect against getting hurt again. Now, there's when we consider the various moments in life that we move through, the reality is that there's a legitimate space in life for both experiences. There are legitimate moments in life where absolutely it is important to go on attack and to protect against getting hurt again, especially when you're connected with someone or you're in a conflict with someone who is not invested in your well-being. And then there are also moments in life where it's important to hold your tongue and to move through that situation. But generally speaking, when conflicts arise, the hope would be that there could be another card to play between those two spectrums. And the card that I'm looking to discuss today is about empathy. The truth of the matter is that conflict is a fact of life for a variety of reasons. We have situations where we are engaged with someone and we just have different perspectives. Our priorities or our solutions to a problem can be vastly different. And for a lot of people in the behavioral health realm believe that many of the conflicts that arise are simply the result of misunderstandings. I've heard some go so far as to say that 90% of conflicts that arise are a result of a misunderstanding. Irrespective of the actual percentage, a great deal of conflict does stem from misunderstandings. And this is where I feel like empathy becomes so critical. I feel like this is our single greatest tool to dispel misunderstanding. Now, I've heard many ways to define empathy, and one that I especially appreciate described it as the ability to sense the other person's emotions, as well as imagine what the other person might be feeling, thinking, or experiencing in that moment. More times than not, when people take the time to express themselves in an empathic way, it becomes extremely difficult for the other person to sustain the energy necessary for a conflict to be maintained. Now, when one of the people engaged in the conflict chooses to lead with empathy, more times than not, in these situations, there's a great likelihood for there to be favorable attitudes and higher readiness for reconciliation. When you have two people engaged in a conflict that is taking place, an interesting dynamic can potentially arise. And typically speaking, these conflicts go to one or two ends of the spectrum. We either engage in a dialogue, or we're having a debate. And how we differentiate the two is that, from the standpoint with the debate, what we're talking about is it's in essence an adversarial interaction. There are two differing points of view, and each person is invested in, or however many points of views are at play in the interaction or in the conflict. And each party or group is invested in pushing their agenda forward. They want to be right. They need to win. It's a competition to see who can effectively get their point across. Now, a great deal has been written about the fact that when spouses feel compelled to win their arguments with each other, or if friends feel so compelled to be right, if you will, that what ends up losing is the relationship. When it's all about being right, connection is what sacrifices or gets sacrificed. And so being entrenched in debate, depending on the topic, because sometimes debate is fun. And, sitting around with my buddies, yucking it up about the basketball game and who's the greatest basketball player, or who's a fan of the best football team, do your thing. Yeah, I get that. But when the stakes are high, when the emotions are tied in too heavily, when the investment level of the parties involved reaches a certain point that it crosses over from friendly banter or friendly debate to an emotionally triggering situation, that's when the opportunity for the relationship to take a hit presents itself. And that's what we want to guard against. Now, the alternative to a debate is dialogue. Now, in dialogue, people freely and creatively explore issues. They listen deeply to each other and suspend their own views in search of the truth. What's the truth of this situation? Let's get that uncovered. Let's sift through all of the emotion. Let's sift through all of the ego, and let's just get to the truth. And let's figure out the truth so that we can remain in connection. I think it's really important to stress how critical it is to, as I was stating a moment ago with regards to dialogue, how important it is to listen deeply. This is the bedrock, if you will, to empathy. Empathy is not about being a scapegoat or letting the other person have their way per se. It's not about stuffing your feelings and allowing the other person to just walk all over you. It's about seeking to understand the other person's point, to acknowledge them, to validate their feelings, to validate their point of view, their perspective. This is the point in which reconciliation has the opportunity to occur. So for me, the question then becomes, so what does that look like? Because as I've worked over the years, I've, especially in my private practice, had many opportunities to sit with couples where there was so much water on the bridge, and not just couples, friends, family members, where there was so much water under the bridge that bitterness, resentment, had created such a wall that it was hard to see to the other side. It was hard to see the other person's point of view. It was hard to acknowledge the other person's feelings and perspective. And the hope is that by using empathy and leading with that in these situations, that we can avoid getting to those places where the walls are so high or so thick, or that there's so much water under the bridge that they can't get to a point of reconciling and finding connection again. So I have a few super simple steps to help guide a person in the direction of being able to better understand what the other person is talking about, and hopefully allow for an opportunity to find a way back to reconciliation and moving through the conflict. So when in the midst of a conflict, I always recommend, first things first, before any responses come up, is to simply check in with self. Take a deep breath, especially when, in those of us that are more in tune with our feelings, our thoughts, reactions, it may come a little bit more easily to do this, but always good. And I think we all know when we start getting to that point where the emotions are starting to run high, where the other person is just ticking you off, and it's just, you're just not interested in hearing anything. And I think in those moments, it's important to first lead with just taking a deep breath, catching your breath, centering yourself, to figure out and to think for a moment about what's your next step. And I'm not talking about it, because some situations, if you're responding to an email that upsets you, that's one thing. If you're in a conversation with somebody and you're on the spot, it's a little more, it can be a little more difficult to take a breath. And depending on who you're engaged with, it can be a little more difficult to take a breath. And so taking a breath can take a few different forms. Sometimes it's just a matter of taking a breath. Sometimes it's a matter of taking a step away from the situation for a moment so that you can re-engage with a more clear mind. But in that moment, just taking a breath to center in on, okay, what is it? What's coming up for me? How am I feeling? What am I thinking? And then moving to a place of, okay, well, let me understand what this other person is saying first before I give a response. And so that's where the empathy comes in. Because oftentimes what I would tell people is that we first want to allow the other person to, you want to give them an opportunity to be heard. And so I always recommend, instead of, once the person has made their point, instead of immediately jumping to a rebuttal, we seek clarity, we seek understanding. So what does that look like? So, person so-and-so is talking to me about how what I just said hurt their feelings. And so instead of me immediately defending my point, I may take a moment to just go, okay, so what I hear you saying is, and then just simply repeating back to them what it is that, what I believe their point is and what they just communicated. Did I get that? And then after stating that, then asking the question, did I get that correct? That gives them the opportunity to either acknowledge that, yes, you are on target and you do understand their points, or maybe you're off a little bit and there needs to be some additional clarification. And so that is their opportunity to get clarity. And so doing that a couple times, it helps the other person to understand that you do care about what they have to say, and that you are trying to better understand the point that they're trying to get across. Once you have agreement that you're on target, then it's about putting yourself in the other person's shoes. And here's where the first was the understanding, second is the empathy piece, meaning that I will then express to them in a way that lets them know that I understand where you come from. How do I do that? Well, I imagine what it may feel to be in their shoes, making the point that they're making, regardless of my intention, what I intended. What's most important in that moment is how the other person is feeling, or their perspective. And so, I then lead with, well, if I were in your shoes, I would feel, and then you fill in the blanks. Or if I were in your shoes, I would be thinking, and then you fill in the blanks. And this is the point in which, ideally, the other person will have the opportunity to feel validated. And for any of us that have ever been in a conflict regardless of how upset you are in that moment, when you see from the other person that they are validating your feelings, they're validating your experience, they are communicating to you that how you feel, what you're going through in that moment is important to them. It has a disarming effect. It has a way of lowering the hurt. It disarms the anger, and it creates a space where there's an opportunity to turn the corner from being in conflict and shifting to reconciliation. It's not 100% yet, but you're on that road. And then comes the next step, which is if you're on target with how they're feeling, or what they're thinking, their perspective, and that they've received your empathic comments, then the comment of, I'm sorry that this situation has left you feeling this way. Now, if you've legitimately done something wrong, then that's your opportunity to acknowledge that. But if it's just a matter of a misunderstanding, as I was stating earlier, then yeah, you shouldn't apologize for something that you didn't do. But sometimes, just because signals got crossed, people will be left holding the emotional bag, if you will. And this is the opportunity for you to acknowledge their feelings and provide a pathway to being able to come back around to reconciliation. Now, depending on who you are dealing with, if this is someone that you are in an ongoing relationship with, whatever that be, whether it's a family member, a loved one, a friend, a wife, husband, boyfriend, partner, significant other, what have you, then, after spending some time acknowledging them, then the opportunity will present itself for you to have your feelings and opinions heard and hopefully acknowledged and validated. And I think this is where the concern may come up for some, is the fear that if I do this for them, who's going to do it for me? And are they going to hear me? Am I going to, is my perspective going to be heard? And when you're engaged in a conflict with someone that cares at all about what you think or feel, then the opportunity will present itself. But what we want to do is we want to disarm the animosity. And that's where the empathy provides a pathway forward for that. By disarming the animosity, we then provide an opportunity to move towards reconciliation, to move towards connection, to maintain connection, eliminate the opportunities for resentments, bitterness, frustration to build and therefore divide. I think ultimately in these conflict resolutions type situations, when we lead with empathy, we are reminded of and stay on target with this idea that the goal is understanding. The goal is to diffuse the disagreement. The goal is reconciliation. I hope that this brief conversation on conflict resolution was helpful, and I thank you so much for your time.